In yesterday's read aloud, we learned about the habits of honeybees and paper wasps. These are both social insects. In our read aloud, we saw these insects display some characteristics that all social insects share. 1, they live together in organized communities called colonies. 2, they have very specialized jobs. And 3, they depend upon and cooperate with one another. Some examples of this are that certain honeybees and paper wasps gather food, some care for young, and some care for the queen. Today, we are going to learn about some more social insects. But before we do, we're going to go over some vocabulary words that we will see. Destructive. If something is destructive, it causes great damage or harm. For example, hurricanes can be very destructive storms. Take a minute to think about something you know that can be destructive. The antonym of destructive, or opposite, is constructive. If something is constructive, that means that it's very helpful or makes something better. If an engineer builds a new bridge over a river, that is constructive. But if a puppy chews through your mother's sneakers, that is destructive. Aggressive. Aggressive means forceful or ready to attack. For example, a mother bear might become aggressive if she thought that her baby cubs were in danger. Chambers. A chamber is an empty, enclosed space, kind of like a room. In beehives, bees split their hives into small chambers that are shaped like hexagons. Emit. Emit means to send out or give off. When our fire alarms go off in the school, they emit a very loud noise. Nurseries. A nursery is a place to breed and care for young animals or plants. For example, worker ants feed baby ants in separate chambers called nurseries. Hi there, everybody. Because I'm one of the most common insects on the planet, I'm sure you know that I am an ant. But did you realize how much my cousins and I look like a wasp? Take a close look. See how slender or thin our waists are? Mine is unusually flexible, making it easy to bend and twist. Count my body parts. You'll see that I have 3, just like all other insects. My head with its long antennae, my thorax, and my abdomen. Here's something you might not know. I have 2 stomachs. Both are located in my abdomen, but one is for my own digestion, and the other, called the crop, is just a storage bin where I keep food for other ants. The fact that I store food for other ants should tell you something about me. What do you think that tells you about ants? Ants are social insects. We raise and care for our young in ant colonies. There are many different kinds of ants with many different ways of life. Carpenter ants build their nests in wood. Leafcutter ants grow fungus on the leaves they cut in vast or very large underground gardens. A fungus is a type of living organism. It's not a plant or an animal. Mold is one kind of fungus. The aggressive weaver ants live in the leaves they bind together in trees. Remember, aggressive means forceful or ready to attack. The huge colonies of army ants travel in groups, eating everything in sight. Trapjaw ants can jump distances of more than 12 inches. That's the entire length of a ruler. Harvester ants build huge nest mounds where they store seeds. Beware of the red fire ants. They sting. I am a black garden ant, the type that you may see most often. So that is the kind of ant that I am going to tell you about today. Like many other ants, we live in underground tunnels or passageways. Bees have honeycombs, paper wasps have paper nests, and we have tunnels. Miles and miles of tunnels, full of little chambers or rooms. Hundreds of very dark chambers. A colony may have as few as 12 ants or as many as 1,000,000 or more. The center of an ant colony's life is this nest of tunnels. An ant colony begins with the queen. A young queen is born in one colony, but leaves that colony to start her own. Her wings carry her into the air to find a mate. Once she mates, she sheds her wings and immediately finds a nesting place underground. There she builds a chamber and seals herself inside to lay her eggs. When ant larvae hatch, the queen cares for the first brood herself, feeding them with her own saliva as they change from worm-like larvae into pupae and finally adults. The queen does not leave the nest this whole time, getting nutrition from her now useless wing muscles in order to survive. Ants undergo a complete metamorphosis. Remember, a metamorphosis is a change that many insects go through. The 4 stages in a complete metamorphosis are egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Most of the eggs eventually develop into small female worker ants that begin their lifetime of hard work by gathering food for the queen and making sure she is well fed. The queen will never leave the nest again, living there for 10 to 20 years, perhaps even longer. As the mother of the colony, she has her own special chamber. Her only job from this point on is to lay eggs. The worker ants carry the eggs from the queen's chamber into nurseries, where they keep the eggs clean and moist by licking them until they hatch. Remember, nurseries are places to breed and care for young animals or plants. Then they carry the larvae into separate chambers to feed them. Black ants eat other insects, any crumbs that we can find, and the honeydew of aphids. Honeydew is a sugary liquid that is made by aphids. The ants collect the honeydew and protect the aphids from predators. We chew the food up well and put it in a pouch in our mouths where the liquid is squeezed out of it. We spit out the solid parts and swallow the liquid. Remember, we have 2 stomachs, one being a crop for storing food, so worker ants come back to the nest with crops full of food for the young. As they grow, the larvae molt a few times, and after a few weeks, they spin cocoons. Remember, to molt means to shed their skin. The worker ants move these newly formed pupae into much drier chambers where they rest until they are ready to gnaw their way out into the world. As social insects, ants cooperate in many ways. Remember, cooperate means to work together. When these new workers emerge, some will help care for the queen and larvae, and some will build and repair the tunnels, while others will guard the nest. These guards, called soldier ants, have larger heads and jaws than the other ants, and they place their bodies across the entrance to the nest to defend the colony. All ants, including soldier ants, emit chemical signals that other ants smell with their antennae. Soldier ants use these signals to warn the colony of danger. This is one way that ants communicate or share information. Another way ants communicate is through touch. If an ant is hungry, it taps the food gatherer lightly with its antennae to let it know that it would like to eat. They exchange the food mouth to mouth in what looks like little kisses. When food is shared, the ants also share and pass along some chemical information important for the entire colony. If one of us ants gets trapped when the soil around us caves in, we produce a squeaky sound by rubbing joints together, and other ants hear the cry for help through their legs. Before I leave, I want to introduce you to another social insect that some people mistakenly call white ants. Do you think that these look like ants? They're not. They are termites. Termites are more closely related to cockroaches, and yet they do not have hard exoskeletons. They are soft-bodied and nearly blind. They would not survive as solitary insects on their own, but they are very successful social insects. There are several differences between termites and the other social insects you have learned about: honeybees, paper wasps, and ants. Termites do not go through as many stages of development. They skip the pupa stage, so their metamorphosis is incomplete. Termite society is a bit different as well. Both a king and a queen rule termite colonies. They start a colony together. The queen is the most important member of the colony, sometimes laying 6,000 or 7,000 eggs a day. She is so well protected by the countless numbers of worker termites that it is almost impossible to find her within the colony. Just in case something should happen to the royal couple, termite colonies include substitute kings and queens as well. Termite workers perform jobs similar to the worker ants' jobs, but the job of guarding the colony rests with a small number of soldiers equipped with strong legs and long, powerful jaws. Unlike honeybees, paper wasps, and ants, where all of the workers are female, in termite colonies, both male and female workers are important members of society. Termites' favorite food is wood. They can be very destructive if they choose to eat through the walls of a house. So remember, destructive means they can do a lot of harm or damage. So if they're eating through the walls of your house, they're probably destroying your house or being destructive towards your house. Depending on where they live, some termite species eat insects, waste materials, and fungus. They build their temperature-controlled nests underground, inside fallen trees, in timber, and in tree branches. Look at the image on the left. Does this nest look a bit like a wasp nest? I think so. It's made of chewed wood and saliva, like a wasp nest, but with added mud and soil. Some termites build mounds above ground to house their colonies, like in the image on the right. These towering mud structures are hard as rock, and some are as tall as a 2-story house. Lots of teamwork goes into building these mounds with incredible air conditioning systems to keep the chambers cool in very hot climates. It sounds like the termites are very cooperative when they build their mounds or nests together. Next time, you'll hear from an insect that glows in the dark. Until then, be thinking about who it might be.
Alright, my friends, hello. In our read aloud today, we learned that ants and termites are both social insects. Think about what it means to be a social insect. I want you to tell me, what are some things we learned today about how ants and termites behave and what they do that proves that they are social insects? How could we prove that that statement is true? Like all social insects, ants and termites live together in communities called colonies, where they all work together and everyone has a specific job. What are some of those jobs that ants and termites have? You've got it. Just like bees that we learned about yesterday, the queen lays eggs, but the queen also helps build the tunnels. They have workers that help build the tunnels that feed the young, and then they have guards that protect the nest and keep it safe. How are ants and termites different? We talked about some similarities or things that they do that are the same, but what are some things that make them different from each other? There are a couple things you could say to answer that question. How are they different? How are ants different from termites? Remember, termites have multiple queens, and ants only have one. Males in ant colonies, their only job is to mate with the queen, but males in termite colonies have lots of different jobs. Another thing that's different about those two insects is how they develop, or their life cycle. Termites go through an incomplete life cycle. That means that they start as an egg, they move to a nymph, and then an adult. There are only 3 stages. But ants go, also, another important thing about that incomplete metamorphosis, this is a praying mantis, not a termite, but termites go through a similar process. We can see in our praying mantis example, the nymph looks like the adult. The baby, or the nymph, looks the same as the adult, the same shape and form, a little bit of a different color, but it looks the same. Ants go through a complete metamorphosis, which means that they undergo a huge change. They start as an egg, then they move to the larva stage. A butterfly larva is called a caterpillar. Then they move to the pupa stage before becoming an adult. In a complete metamorphosis, the larva stage does not look like the adult. It looks like an entirely different creature. All right, friends, my last question. Many people will stack firewood on their wooden porches, so it is handy to transport into the house to make fires when it is cold outside. Given what you know about the termites' eating habits, do you think that's a good idea? Why or why not? Many people will stack firewood on their wooden porches, so it's easy to bring it into the house to burn in a fire when it's cold. Think about termites' eating habits. Do you think that's a good idea or not? I don't think it would be a very good idea. Why isn't that a good idea? Why do you think I think that's not a good idea? Because termites eat wood, right? Lots and lots and lots of it. And if termites are eating wood, they're going to eat through all of that firewood. And if the porch is made of wood, they might eat the porch or even the house. So I think it's probably not a good idea if you live anywhere where termites might come and infest your wood pile. All right, friends, go ahead and open up the PDF that is attached to this assignment. I'm going to jump over to my computer and I will show you what to do with those pages. All right, my friends, we have been learning about a lot of different types of insects. And most of our stories have been told from the point of view of a certain type of insect. Today, we are going to start working on our own stories about insects. Just like our read aloud, our stories will be told from the point of view of a specific type of insect. The very first thing you'll need to do for today is decide which kind of insect you would like to write your story about. When we write a story, we're going to write a narrative story, but our narrative story is also going to be informative or informational. In our story, just like in our read-alouds,
we are going to let our audience know some important facts about that insect. When we're planning on writing a story, our very first step is to plan. First, we make a plan for what we're going to write, and then we will use that plan to create a draft. We will then edit our draft and then publish it, which is our last step. Today, we are just going to work on the first step, our plan. We've got a planning page on this homework assignment that is going to help us create a plan for our story. I'm going to wait on the title. The first step on our planning guide is our title. I'm going to wait for just a minute. The title of my story might be affected or changed based on what kind of insect I decide to write about. So it's okay if you need to come back to your title and think about your characters first. In my classroom, I know you can't see them as much in the videos, but in my classroom I have lots of pictures of bees or of honeycombs. I have lots of bee decorations or honeycomb decorations because I think bees are really, really neat, and I know that they are so, so important. So I think, because I like bees, I'm going to write about a bee. The type of insect I'm going to write about is going to be a bee. I need to think of a name for my main character. I can include other characters also, but I'm going to focus mostly on my main character. I want my character's name to sound like a name a bee would have. I'm going to name mine Beatrice, the bee. Ooh, that might be a good title for my story too, Beatrice the bee. Or now that I know that I'm writing about a bee, I could name my story A Day, oops, we need to capitalize our titles. A Day in the Life of a Bee. But remember, we want to make sure we are including information about those insects. Some questions that you should think about including in your story. Think about whether your insect is a solitary or a social insect. I know that bees are social insects. Oops. There we go. It's a social insect. Does your insect go through incomplete metamorphosis or complete metamorphosis? I know that bees go through a complete metamorphosis. Move that over so you can see that. There we go. Does your insect have wings? What do you think? Do bees have wings? Yes, bees definitely have wings. They need those wings. I'm just going to write wings. And what type of mouth does your insect have? The bee's mouth isn't too interesting. And I'm running out of room, so I'm going to leave that one for now. Think about those questions to help give more detail about your insect as you're writing about them. Because I'm writing about a bee, I also want to include some information about what kind of bee. Remember, in a beehive, there are bees that have different jobs. Each bee has a different job to help them keep the colony running smoothly. I think I want Beatrice. I don't think I want her to be the queen bee or a drone. I'm going to have Beatrice be a forager bee. Remember, forager bees go out and collect nectar from flowers and bring it back to the hive. Because Beatrice is a forager, my setting is going to be somewhere where there are lots of flowers. I'm going to pick a park. And because flowers bloom in the spring and live in the summer, and most insects are born in the spring and live throughout the summer, I think I'm going to pick summertime as part of my setting. Most of my story will probably take place in the park on those flowers, but Beatrice will have to bring them back to the hive. So the beehive is also going to be one of my settings for my story. After we have our characters planned and our settings planned, then we need to plan the plot of our story. The plot describes what happens in the story. Usually when we talk about the plot of a story, we divide it into 3 separate sections. The beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. You'll want to put in a sentence or 2 to explain what's going to happen in your story. Mine, of course, is going to be about Beatrice the bee going out foraging for nectar. Yours will be different. You might not write about a bee. You might write about a fly, or a grasshopper, or an ant, or a firefly, or a praying mantis. You get to choose. You can write about any of the insects that we've talked about so far. In the beginning of my story, I think my story is going to start at the park. And at the park, Beatrice is going to visit 6 different flowers. She's looking for the best nectar. And she might not find it at first, so she'll have to go to a couple of different flowers. Finally, she will find a flower with delicious nectar for her to bring back to the hive. In the middle of the story, as I'm talking about this, I can let my audience know that she has wings and that she is a forager bee. In the middle, there we go, I'm going to say, on her way back, Beatrice runs into her friend. Let's call him Barry the bee. I should add him to my character chart too. She runs into her friend Barry and tells him where to find the nectar. How do bees talk to other bees? How do they show them where to find nectar from flowers? Do they talk like humans do? No, they do a wiggle dance. When she does the wiggle dance, she drops the nectar that she had and has to go back with Barry to get some more. At the end of my story, Beatrice is going to make it back to the hive and she is going to store the honey in one of the honeycombs. Beatrice had a tiring, and busy day, and she deserves a long rest or a nice long nap for all of her hard work. Remember, your plan doesn't have to be absolutely perfect or include every little detail, but it should be a good guide for when you write your draft. Today, all you need is your plan, but you will need access to this for our next lesson. So make sure before you turn this in that you either print it out or make a copy of it, a digital copy of it that you can open up for our next lesson. You will want that so that you can go back and look at it again to help you write your draft. When you have made a copy of this or printed it out, go ahead and turn it in, and you are all finished with our writing for today. On the second page on this PDF, there is a letter for your parents or guardians that explains what we will be learning about in the next week or so. You don't have to do anything with that one. There's nothing that you have to turn in on this one. It's just there for you to look at so you know what we'll be learning about next. All right, my friends, when you've got that turned in, you are all finished today, and I will see you next time.